Who are you gonna call?
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Was It Good? My name is Bob, and tonight I got to see the new Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now, I am a big Ghostbusters fan. I love all the films. In fact, my favorite film is the 2016 Ghostbusters.
Keep that up, mister. I'll find you in contempt.
Whoa, I am truly sorry, Your Honor. In fact, I did not like the 2016 Ghostbusters, but when Ghostbusters Afterlife came out a few years ago, I was actually pleased with how the film turned out. I thought it did a good job of honoring what came before and presenting us with a new generation of Ghostbusters. So I was very interested to see where Ghostbusters Frozen Empire would go as a sequel and if it would be a natural progression of our characters. Now, before we get into the review, why don't you go ahead and let me know what you thought about the film if you've already seen it. Go ahead and share your thoughts and leave a comment in the comments section below. If you disagree with my assessment of the film, that's okay. All I ask is that when you leave a comment, let's not be disagreeable. Don't forget to hit that like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get to the review. The plot of the film is a little bit above average overall, but it's easy enough to follow. It tells the story of the Spengler family as they return to the iconic New York City firehouse where the original Ghostbusters have taken ghostbusting to a whole new level. When the discovery of an ancient artifact is made, it unleashes a new evil.
Evil?
Now Ghostbusters, both new and old, must unite to protect their home and save the world from a second ice age. Now, I thought that the film did several things that were good. For one, it didn't feel like a rehash of previous films. The problem with Afterlife is that at many points it felt like a rehash. It used the same villain from the first film, as well as it had similar events occur. Now, this film is not that. It is something that stands on its own, and they did something fresh with it. In fact, they even said that they were heavily inspired by the animated series, and it's very obvious that they were because you can see the influence from the animated series. A lot of the events feel like that they could have been from the animated series. We're talking about the villain themselves, as well as there's a ghost busting sequence that happens that feels like it could have been from the animated show. Also, I thought that the film did a good job showing the family dynamic between Gary and the Spenglers and showing how they've progressed as a family. And I thought carrying that storyline over was pretty good. Also, I thought that having the original Ghostbusters and Janine back in expanded roles and not just cameos, I thought was a good thing. They actually gave them something to do in this film. And it was nice seeing our favorite Peck back.
Hey, I am Walter Peck, sir, and I'm prepared to make a full report.
And he's the same Walter Peck that we remember. And so it was good seeing him along with as many of the original cast as they could get. But despite doing some things very well, there were some things that they didn't do very well in this movie. Like, first off, I thought there were way too many characters. One of the issues that they had was that they showed as they had the Spengler family, and of course they had the original Ghostbusters, but they also tried to shoehorn in some of the other characters that there were in Afterlife. And I just don't think that they really fit the storyline. Yeah, it was kind of cool seeing them, but they didn't really have that much to do, and I don't think there was a point for them to be there. Also, I would have liked to have seen another ghostbusting sequence with the Spengler family. You see this scene that they're driving along in the car and busting this ghost along the street. Now, this really isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, but I would have liked to have seen them at the ground level and actually working together as a unit and to see what that would have looked like. Also, I didn't think that the villain was that memorable. I thought at the end of the day, some of the other villains were a lot more memorable.
Are you a god?
No, but I can say that Gozer and Vigo from Ghostbusters 2 were both better villains than the one that we had in Frozen Empire. And the last thing that I didn't like about the plot was that they introduced a couple of new characters, and there were some storylines that went with these characters that I didn't particularly like. One in particular, I think actually took away from the Ghostbusters themselves. Like I said, the plot was a little bit above average, but it wasn't too bad. The acting for the most part was pretty good, but I don't think anybody really stood out in this movie. Now, Paul Rudd in the role, he's lovable as Gary, and just like most of his roles, you enjoy seeing him when he's on screen. I thought it was good that they made him a part of the team, and I liked seeing him trying to figure out what it meant to be a part of the family. What I appreciated most was that they actually gave him something to do other than to turn into a dog.
Okay, who brought the dog?
So I thought Paul Rudd was good. I also thought McKenna Grace was pretty good as Phoebe Spengler. She did a good job in Afterlife, and I think she did a good job in this one. And in this one, she actually has to deal with the after effects from Afterlife, in which she practically saved the world, and yet people are viewing her very differently than the way she views herself. So it was interesting to see her struggle with that. Also, I do like the original cast. It's always fun to see them when they're on screen. Anytime you see them, you're like, oh, there's Ray. Oh, there's Winston. Oh, look, it's Venkman.
Dr. Venkman.
Kumail Nanjiani, I thought, was also pretty good in the movie. Now, I didn't particularly like what they did with his character, but I thought he actually did a good job in the movie. And the rest of the cast I thought was okay. I didn't think, again, that there was anybody that stood out, but everybody did a good job. I think the directing overall was decent for this movie. I think Gil Kennan, who also co-wrote the script, did a decent job with the film. I like the fact that they tried to do something different and take some risks. I also like the fact that it was heavily inspired by the animated show. And I also liked the fact that the way nostalgia was used in the film didn't feel like it went overboard for me, because it's a Ghostbusters film. It's going to have a lot of nostalgia in it, and I don't think that it was overdone. Again, I didn't like some of the story choices, and because of that, I didn't like necessarily the execution of it. But overall, I thought the directing was fine. The look of the film I thought was pretty good, and that's important because you're coming into the Ghostbusters world. So it has to look like Ghostbusters. It has to feel like Ghostbusters. So I thought the costumes were good. I thought the sets were fine. The ghostbusting sequences were good. And for the most part, I thought the ghosts looked fine. The biggest issue I had, though, was with Slimer.
Disgusting blob.
I think he actually looks better in the 1984 film than he does in the new one. So that was the main problem that I had with the look of the film. Otherwise, I think the rest of it looked pretty good. Overall, I was entertained by this movie. I think it was a fun sequel, and I think movie audiences as a whole will like the movie. Now, was it good? I don't think it was necessarily that good of a film, but I do think that it was entertaining. I actually prefer Ghostbusters Afterlife over this one because I think that it made more of an emotional connection with an audience. But I do think that Ghostbuster fans and the casual fans, as well as kids, are going to enjoy it. In the theater I was in, the audience seemed to be having a good time. There were some kids that were sitting next to me that enjoyed it. My kids themselves, they liked it as well. So overall, I do think that it's worth seeing. Now, if you're still with me right now, I'd like to thank you for joining me this long. Go ahead and hit that like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next review.